A 16-year-old girl sits quietly in the back row of her high school ROTC classroom, her worn sneakers and second-hand uniform marking her as one of the scholarship students at the prestigious military academy. The afternoon sun streams through tall windows as Colonel Peterson lectures about military precision and the elite units that represent American excellence overseas. When he asks students to share examples of military role models, Maya Rodriguez hesitantly raises her hand and mentions her older sister's service with Naval Special Warfare. The classroom erupts in snickers, and Colonel Peterson's expression hardens with disapproval. "Miss Rodriguez, this is a serious military science class, not a venue for tall tales about family members," he says dismissively, noting her humble background and apparent need for attention. The other cadets join in the mockery, suggesting that scholarship students shouldn't fabricate military connections. Just as tears threaten to overcome her composure, the classroom door opens to reveal the academy's marksmanship instructor carrying targets and equipment for the afternoon shooting competition. From which corner of the world are you witnessing this moment of unexpected precision today? If stories of quiet excellence silencing doubt inspire you, consider subscribing for more moments where skill speaks louder than skepticism. The Jefferson Military Academy stood like a fortress of tradition on the rolling hills of Virginia, its red brick buildings and manicured grounds reflecting over a century of preparing young Americans for military service and leadership. This October afternoon, the advanced ROTC classroom buzzed with the controlled energy of junior and senior cadets discussing their post-graduation plans and military career aspirations. The classroom itself embodied military precision. Uniforms hung on regulation hooks, textbooks arranged in perfect alignment, and maps of global military operations covering walls that had inspired thousands of future officers. Large windows overlooked the academy's parade grounds where younger cadets practiced drill formations under the supervision of tactical officers whose own military careers had brought them back to shape the next generation. At the front of the classroom, Colonel James Peterson commanded attention with the authority that came from 28 years of Army service and 5 years as the Academy's senior military science instructor. His silver hair and chest full of ribbons projected exactly the kind of military competence that impressed Pentagon officials and inspired teenage cadets to dream of similar achievements. His reputation for maintaining impossibly high standards had earned him respect throughout the military education community. Seated in neat rows before Colonel Peterson were 30 of the Academy's most advanced ROTC cadets, juniors and seniors whose academic performance and leadership potential had earned them placement in the Military Science Honors Program. Their uniforms were immaculate, their bearing confident, and their conversation focused on the kinds of military career paths that awaited graduates of one of America's most prestigious military academies. In the front row sat Cadet Captain William Harrison III, whose family's three-generation military tradition and substantial donations to the Academy had secured his position as senior class president. His perfectly pressed uniform and confident demeanor marked him as someone destined for military leadership, regardless of his actual capabilities. Beside him sat Cadet Major Patricia Chun, whose combination of academic excellence and natural leadership abilities had earned her genuine respect from both faculty and fellow cadets. Also prominent in the front rows were the children of career military officers, cadets whose fathers and mothers wore stars and eagles, whose family dinner conversations included discussions of Pentagon politics and deployment schedules, and whose eventual admission to service academies was considered automatic based on family connections and demonstrated commitment to military service. In the back corner of the classroom, almost hidden behind her more prominent classmates, sat Cadet Private Maya Rodriguez, whose presence at the prestigious academy represented both remarkable academic achievement and significant financial sacrifice by her single-mother family. At 16, she possessed the kind of quiet intensity that came from understanding that her opportunity at Jefferson Academy could transform not just her own life, but her family's entire future. Maya's uniform, while clean and properly maintained, showed the wear that came from being purchased secondhand and carefully altered to fit her slight frame. Her textbooks were older editions bought used, and her equipment bore the marks of careful maintenance rather than easy replacement. Around her neck hung a simple chain with what appeared to be a small compass pendant, so subtle that most people wouldn't recognize its significance as a navigation tool used by maritime professionals. Her position in the back of the classroom reflected more than just seating arrangements. It represented the social dynamics that marked elite military academies, where family connections and financial resources often mattered as much as individual merit. Maya's scholarship status and modest background made her somewhat invisible among classmates whose military futures seemed assured by family tradition and personal wealth. Colonel Peterson had been delivering a lecture on military excellence and the elite units that represented American special operations capabilities around the world. His presentation included detailed descriptions of Army Rangers, Marine Force Reconnaissance, Air Force Pararescue, and Navy SEALs. Units whose selection standards and operational achievements placed them at the pinnacle of military service. Ladies and gentlemen, Colonel Peterson declared, his voice carrying the authority that came from personal experience with some of the units he was describing. These elite formations represent the finest warriors our nation has ever produced. The selection processes for these units eliminate 90% of candidates, leaving only those individuals whose physical capabilities, mental toughness, and dedication to excellence set them apart from even the finest conventional military personnel. He clicked through slides showing training footage from various special operations schools, each image reinforcing the extreme demands placed on candidates seeking to join America's most elite military units. The men and women who serve in these capacities represent the absolute pinnacle of military service. They are recruited from the finest conventional units. They undergo training that would break most people, and they serve in conditions that test every limit of human endurance and capability. Cadet Captain Harrison raised his hand with the confidence of someone accustomed to having his contributions valued. Sir, my father served with the 75th Rangers before his promotion to general officer rank. He's told me that special operations selection is as much about mental toughness as physical capability. Colonel Peterson nodded approvingly. Excellent observation, Cadet Harrison. Your father's experience with Ranger operations gives him unique insight into the demands of elite unit service. Several other cadets shared similar stories of family connections to special operations, fathers who had served with Force Recon, uncles who had been Air Force Special Tactics operators, brothers currently serving with various elite units. Each contribution was met with respectful attention and professional discussion of the challenges and achievements associated with such service. The conversation reinforced the classroom's social dynamics, where cadets with military family backgrounds commanded attention and respect, while those without such connections remained largely invisible in discussions of military excellence and career aspirations. After 30 minutes of discussing special operations selection standards, training requirements, and operational achievements, Colonel Peterson opened the floor for broader discussion about military role models and career inspirations. I'd like each of you to consider the military figures who have influenced your decision to pursue military service. These might be historical figures, current military leaders, or family members whose service has inspired your own commitment to defending our nation. The responses that followed reflected the privileged military backgrounds of most cadets. Cadet Major Chin spoke eloquently about her grandfather's service in World War II and Korea, connecting his sacrifice to her own commitment to military service. Cadet Captain Harrison described his family's multi-generational Army tradition and his determination to uphold that legacy through his own service. Other cadets shared stories of fathers currently serving in combat zones, mothers who had broken barriers in previously male-dominated military occupations, and siblings whose achievements in various service branches had set examples for their own military aspirations. Each contribution was met with respectful attention from Colonel Peterson and appreciative comments from fellow cadets. The discussion reinforced the sense that military excellence ran in families, that understanding of service came through generational tradition, and that the finest military careers were built on foundations of family experience and inherited commitment to national defense. As the discussion continued, Maya Rodriguez sat quietly in her back row seat, listening to classmates describe military achievements and family traditions that seemed to dwarf anything her own background could offer. Her mother worked double shifts as a hospital custodian to afford Maya's academy expenses, and their family's military connections were limited to her older sister's recent enlistment in the Navy. But as Colonel Peterson's gaze swept the classroom looking for additional contributions, Maya found herself raising her hand with hesitant determination. The gesture was so quiet and uncertain that Colonel Peterson almost missed it among the confident presentations from her more prominent classmates. "Yes, Cadet Rodriguez," Colonel Peterson said, consulting his seating chart to identify the scholarship student whose contributions to class discussions had been minimal throughout the semester. Maya's voice was barely audible as she began speaking, her nervousness evident in the careful way she chose her words. "Sir, my older sister Carmen serves in the Navy. She's currently assigned to Special Operations training, and her letters describe challenges similar to what you've been discussing about elite unit selection." This statement caused barely suppressed snickers from several cadets in the front rows. Cadet Harrison exchanged amused glances with his friends, clearly finding entertainment in what he perceived as Maya's attempt to claim military connections comparable to their family traditions. Colonel Peterson's expression shifted to the kind of patient skepticism that teachers reserve for students they suspect of embellishing facts to gain attention. "Cadet Rodriguez, when you say your sister is assigned to Special Operations training, can you be more specific about her role and unit assignment?" Maya's cheeks flushed as she realized her vague description had invited scrutiny she wasn't prepared to handle. "Sir, her letters mention training that sounds very demanding physically and mentally. She talks about swimming long distances, weapons training, and survival exercises that seem similar to the SEAL programs you've described." The silence that followed was broken by poorly suppressed laughter from multiple cadets. Cadet Major Chun, who had been respectfully attentive during other presentations, couldn't hide her amusement at Maya's apparent attempt to claim that her sister was training to become a Navy SEAL. Colonel Peterson removed his glasses with the theatrical patience that marked career educators dealing with students who had overreached in their attempts to contribute to class discussions. "Cadet Rodriguez, are you suggesting that your sister is in Navy SEAL training?" Maya's voice grew even quieter as she realized she had walked into a trap created by her own vague descriptions and the class's growing skepticism. "Sir, I'm not certain about the specific designation, but her training description sounds similar to the special operations programs you've discussed." This response triggered actual laughter from several cadets. Cadet Harrison didn't bother to lower his voice as he commented to his friends about scholarship students who felt compelled to fabricate military connections to compensate for their lack of actual family military tradition. Colonel Peterson's patience was clearly exhausted by what he perceived as a disruptive attempt to claim non-existent military credentials. "Cadet Rodriguez, let me explain something about Navy SEAL training. First, the selection standards eliminate over 90% of candidates. Second, the physical demands would challenge elite male athletes. Third, women are not currently serving in Navy SEAL units." He addressed the entire class with the authority of someone whose military experience gave him standing to correct obvious misconceptions. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's important to distinguish between legitimate military service and romanticized fantasies about special operations. Claiming family connections to elite units without proper documentation undermines the real sacrifices made by the families represented in this classroom." The rebuke hit Maya like a physical blow. Around the classroom, she could see her classmates nodding in agreement with Colonel Peterson's assessment, their expressions showing the kind of embarrassed sympathy reserved for people who had made obvious social mistakes. Cadet Captain Harrison felt emboldened to join the correction with what he clearly thought was helpful clarification. "Sir, maybe Cadet Rodriguez's sister is in some kind of basic Navy training program and the descriptions got exaggerated in family conversations. It's easy for civilians to misunderstand military terminology." This suggestion, delivered with condescending kindness, stung worse than outright mockery. Maya felt tears threatening as she realized that her attempt to honor her sister's service had been transformed into evidence of her family's ignorance about military realities. Colonel Peterson decided to use Maya's mistake as a teaching moment for the entire class. "Cadet Rodriguez, this is exactly why military science education is so important. Civilian misconceptions about military service can lead to claims that diminish the real achievements of the elite warriors we've been discussing." He turned to address the full classroom with renewed authority. The Navy SEALs represent the absolute pinnacle of military achievement. Their selection standards, their training demands, and their operational capabilities place them among the most elite warriors in human history. Casual claims about family connections to such units show disrespect for the real sacrifices and achievements of the men who earn the SEAL Trident. Maya sat in her back row seat, isolated by laughter and professional dismissal, her attempt to honor her sister's service having been transformed into evidence of her family's civilian ignorance and her own need for attention that she couldn't legitimately claim. Just as Colonel Peterson prepared to move on to other topics, the classroom door opened with the kind of purposeful energy that marked someone arriving with specific business to conduct. Master Sergeant Rebecca Torres, the Academy's senior marksmanship instructor, entered carrying an armload of target frames and what appeared to be scoring materials for the afternoon's shooting competition. Her weathered face and calloused hands told the story of someone who had spent decades perfecting and teaching precision marksmanship to countless military personnel. "Colonel Peterson," she announced, her voice carrying the respectful authority that marked senior NCOs addressing commissioned officers. "I'm here to collect the cadets registered for this afternoon's precision marksmanship competition. We have range time allocated, and I need to verify the participant roster." Colonel Peterson consulted his schedule, clearly annoyed by the interruption to his lesson on military excellence and elite unit standards. "Sergeant Torres, I have 12 cadets registered for the marksmanship competition. The usual suspects from our advanced military science program." Master Sergeant Torres reviewed her clipboard with professional attention to detail. "Sir, I show 13 registered participants. The additions include some of our scholarship cadets who qualified through the preliminary shooting assessments." She looked around the classroom with the experienced eye of someone who had trained thousands of young marksmen over her military career. "I need Cadet Rodriguez to report for equipment checkout and range preparation." The announcement caused surprised murmurs throughout the classroom. Maya Rodriguez, the scholarship student who had just been mocked for her claims about military family connections, was apparently registered for the Academy's most prestigious marksmanship competition. Colonel Peterson frowned as he checked his own records. "Sergeant Torres, are you certain about Cadet Rodriguez's registration? The precision marksmanship competition is reserved for our most advanced cadets with demonstrated shooting expertise." Master Sergeant Torres's expression showed the kind of professional confidence that came from decades of evaluating marksmanship potential in young military personnel. "Sir, Cadet Rodriguez qualified with scores that exceeded most of your advanced program participants. Her preliminary assessment showed natural shooting ability that's quite remarkable." Maya stood slowly from her back row seat, her movement uncertain as she processed the unexpected recognition of abilities that none of her classmates knew she possessed. Cadet Harrison couldn't contain his skepticism about Maya's apparent inclusion in the elite marksmanship competition. "Sergeant Torres, are we talking about the same Cadet Rodriguez who was just claiming family connections to Navy SEALs? Because that would be quite a coincidence." Master Sergeant Torres turned her attention to Maya with professional respect that contrasted sharply with the mockery she had been receiving from her classmates. "Cadet Rodriguez, are you ready for range time? I need to verify your equipment and review the competition format." Maya's voice was still quiet, but it carried new authority as she responded to someone who had recognized her actual capabilities rather than dismissing them based on assumptions. "Yes, Sergeant Torres. I have my gear prepared, and I've been practicing the fundamentals you taught during our preliminary sessions." This exchange caused confused murmuring among the other cadets. The scholarship student they had been mocking apparently had been receiving advanced marksmanship instruction and had qualified for a competition that represented the Academy's highest level of shooting excellence. Colonel Peterson was clearly struggling to reconcile Maya's apparent shooting abilities with his assessment of her as a scholarship student who fabricated military connections for attention. "Sergeant Torres, can you provide details about Cadet Rodriguez's qualification scores? I want to ensure that competition standards are being maintained appropriately." Master Sergeant Torres consulted her records with the methodical attention that marked senior NCOs reviewing performance data. "Sir, Cadet Rodriguez's preliminary scores exceeded Academy records in several categories. Her precision at extended range and her consistency under time pressure were particularly impressive. She looked directly at Maya with obvious professional pride. Cadet Rodriguez, would you like to share with your classmates the results from your qualification shooting? Maya hesitated, clearly uncomfortable with being the center of attention after the earlier mockery of her family military claims. Sergeant Torres, I just tried to apply the fundamentals you taught about breathing control and sight alignment. Cadet Rodriguez, Master Sergeant Torres said with increasing enthusiasm, scored perfect 10s on 15 consecutive shots at 200 yards, followed by expert-level accuracy at 500 yards under windy conditions. These results would be impressive for experienced military marksmen, let alone a 16-year-old cadet. The classroom fell into stunned silence as the implications of this information sank in. Maya Rodriguez, the scholarship student they had been mocking just minutes before, apparently possessed marksmanship abilities that exceeded those of cadets whose military family backgrounds had given them access to the finest instruction and equipment. Cadet Major Chun was the first to find her voice, though it came out with obvious confusion. Maya, I had no idea you were involved in competitive shooting. Where did you learn marksmanship at that level? Maya's answer was quiet, but carried new confidence born from recognition of her actual abilities. My sister Carmen taught me the fundamentals during her leave time before her current deployment. She said that marksmanship was one of the most important skills she learned during her military training. The mention of her sister's instruction caused Colonel Peterson to pay attention with renewed interest. Cadet Rodriguez, you mentioned that your sister provided marksmanship instruction. What was the nature of her military training that qualified her to teach precision shooting? Maya looked around at her classmates, who were now listening with respectful attention rather than dismissive mockery. Sir, Carmen completed Navy Special Operations training before her current assignment. She said that marksmanship was fundamental to everything else she learned. Master Sergeant Torres stepped forward with professional curiosity. Cadet Rodriguez, when you say your sister completed Navy Special Operations training, can you be more specific about her program and current assignment? Maya's voice grew stronger as she realized that Master Sergeant Torres was asking professional questions rather than challenging her family's credibility. Sergeant Torres, Carmen is Lieutenant Carmen Rodriguez, and she's currently assigned to Naval Special Warfare Development Group. Her training included advanced marksmanship instruction that she shared with me during her pre-deployment leave. The silence that followed was profound. Every person in the classroom understood that Naval Special Warfare Development Group was the official designation for the Navy's most elite special operations unit, the SEALs that Colonel Peterson had been describing as representing the absolute pinnacle of military achievement. Master Sergeant Torres's expression showed growing respect and understanding. Cadet Rodriguez, your sister is assigned to DevGru? That would explain your natural shooting ability and your advanced understanding of marksmanship fundamentals. Colonel Peterson sat down heavily in his chair, his earlier dismissal of Maya's claims now revealed as a profound misjudgment of both her family's military service and her own capabilities. Cadet Rodriguez, he said quietly, his voice carrying none of its earlier authority, I owe you and your sister a significant apology. I dismissed your claims about her service without proper consideration, and I failed to recognize that your family's military background might be more distinguished than I assumed. Maya accepted the apology with grace that surprised everyone present. Sir, I understand that my description of Carmen's service wasn't very clear. Most people don't expect to find special operations personnel from families like mine. Master Sergeant Torres addressed the full classroom with the authority of someone whose military experience gave her standing to educate young cadets about assumptions and military service. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an important lesson about judging people based on appearances and family background rather than individual merit and documented capabilities. She gestured toward Maya with obvious respect. Cadet Rodriguez comes from a family that has produced one of the Navy's most elite warriors, and she herself possesses marksmanship abilities that exceed those of most military personnel. These facts were true regardless of whether we recognized or acknowledged them. Cadet Captain Harrison, who had been most vocal in mocking Maya's claims, approached her with obvious embarrassment. Maya, I owe you a serious apology. I made assumptions about your family and your background that were completely unfounded and insulting. Maya shook his hand graciously. William, I understand why my claim seemed unlikely. Most people don't expect special operations families to look like mine. As the class period concluded and cadets prepared to transition to afternoon activities, the marksmanship competition had taken on new significance. Maya Rodriguez, the scholarship student who had been mocked for her military family claims, was now recognized as the participant most likely to win the Academy's most prestigious shooting competition. The competition that afternoon drew an unusually large crowd of spectators, including faculty members who had heard about the morning's classroom drama and wanted to witness Maya's shooting abilities firsthand. The precision marksmanship course required competitors to engage targets at distances from 100 to 500 yards, under time pressure, and with scoring standards that challenged even experienced military marksmen. Most Academy cadets considered finishing in the top 10 to be an achievement worthy of recognition. Maya's performance exceeded every expectation and established new Academy records in multiple categories. Her consistency at long range, her accuracy under time pressure, and her composure during competitive stress demonstrated marksmanship abilities that would have been impressive in active military personnel, let alone teenage cadets. As she fired her final shots of the competition, the range fell silent except for the sound of her breathing and the precise crack of her rifle. Each shot placement was called out by Master Sergeant Torres, and each result drew murmurs of amazement from competitors and spectators alike. When the final scores were calculated, Maya had not just won the competition, she had achieved perfect scores in 3 of 5 categories and set new Academy records that would stand for years to come. At the awards ceremony that evening, Maya received recognition not just for her marksmanship excellence, but for demonstrating that military families came in all forms and that individual merit could transcend social assumptions and economic circumstances. Colonel Peterson, who had learned profound lessons about judgment and assumptions during the day's events, presented Maya with the championship trophy and a formal apology for his earlier dismissal of her family's military service. Cadet Rodriguez represents everything that military education should celebrate, he told the assembled audience. Individual excellence, family sacrifice, and the determination to succeed regardless of obstacles or assumptions about background and capability. Master Sergeant Torres used the ceremony to remind all cadets about the importance of looking beyond surface appearances to recognize merit and capability wherever they might be found. Today, we learned that military excellence can emerge from unexpected places, that family military tradition doesn't always announce itself through wealth or social status, and that the finest military families are often those that serve quietly and without expectation of recognition, she told the gathered cadets and faculty. 6 months later, Maya received appointment to the Naval Academy based on her academic performance, her demonstrated leadership potential, and a letter of recommendation from her sister's commanding officer that described the Rodriguez family as representing the finest traditions of military service and sacrifice. Her story became legendary within the Jefferson Military Academy, shared with incoming classes as an example of the importance of individual merit over social assumptions and the need to recognize excellence regardless of its source. The classroom where Maya had been mocked for her military family claims was later renamed in honor of all military families who served with distinction regardless of their social or economic status, and Maya's championship trophy was permanently displayed as a reminder that individual excellence could emerge from the most unexpected places. Have you ever witnessed someone whose quiet excellence challenged every assumption about background and capability? Sometimes the most remarkable achievements belong to people whose families serve with distinction far from the spotlight, whose individual merit transcends social expectations, and whose success reminds us that military excellence recognizes only dedication, skill, and character, qualities that exist independently of wealth, social status, or family connections.